think most people, I mean, even Alec Baldwin, you would think he's a savvy, wealthy, powerful guy. You'd think he'd know that.
No.
Yes.
No. It doesn't matter how wealthy or savvy you are. I've had clients who are millionaires who've gone and talked to law enforcement, who have lawyers to handle all their stuff, but they can't fathom themselves either being guilty or other ones who think they can talk themselves out of a potential charge.
So we're talking Alec Baldwin today. So I guess the thing everyone's talking about is Alec Baldwin's an actor. So he feels like I can go out, I can talk to people, I can sway people. So he actually went and talked to the cops. And he talked to the cops before he had any legal representation.
Not a good idea.
Yes, and and right after he had done the thing, I don't want to call it a crime yet, we don't know if it's a crime, but done the thing, he pulled the trigger or didn't pull the trigger, whatever he said. He had said that. Is that what people do? I mean, it seems nuts to me.
That is unfortunately what most people do. The reality is most people think they can talk themselves out of it, or they don't see themselves as potentially guilty, and therefore they think that they have to cooperate. So there's different reasons why some people, or I should say most people,
right?
Most people will talk to the police. And it's one, just to be clear, is people who can't fathom themselves being guilty, and so therefore they're going to talk.
Right. So the idea is only a guilty person needs a lawyer.
Correct.
Right, that's the thought
and that
process.
is a perception.
Yep.
That is what most people, I believe, in this country think.
But you've told me this before, right? It's not everything you say can and will be used either against you or to protect you if you're innocent. That's not what it is.
Right.
It's what you say will be used against you.
Correct.
There's no, and if you're innocent, we're going to use this to protect you. That doesn't exist. But I think most people, I mean, even Alec Baldwin, you would think he's a savvy, wealthy, powerful guy. You'd think he'd know that.
No.
Yes.
No. It doesn't matter how wealthy or savvy you are. I've had clients who are millionaires who've gone and talked to law enforcement, who have lawyers to handle all their stuff, but they can't fathom themselves either being guilty or other ones who think they can talk themselves out of a potential charge.
So now he goes and talks to the cops, and he says a bunch of stuff. Do the cops now, is that official? Can the cops now use that against him? And is that an official statement? So that can go to court now in theory.
Yeah. So they took an extra step that I was actually surprised that they did, the cops. They actually Mirandized him.
Whoa.
Right? They Mirandized him, but he wasn't in custody at the time that he spoke to them.
Well, then why did he get scared?
Well, he apparently, is my understanding, that he asked the question, am I being charged with something? After Miranda said, no, it's just procedure. But they didn't tell him that the woman had died until after the interview. Right? So that could be a thing, but he waived his Miranda rights.
Got it.
Right? And so it may become an issue as to whether they can use this case. I think the statement comes in because he wasn't in custody. He was free to leave.
But isn't someone going to say, right? Isn't some lawyer, eventually he'll get a lawyer if he doesn't have one now. He's gonna figure it out, right? So if he doesn't have one already, I'm sure he's going to get one soon.
I think he has one.
Yeah, I would assume so, right?
Yeah.
So when he made a mistake not calling you, but that's his mistake. Anyways, so
big mistake. Yeah.
Aren't they going to? Isn't his lawyer going to say, look, he was under duress because he had just pulled the trigger, or not pulled the trigger, done the thing. He had just done the thing, so what he said, he was nuts, and is he going to try to get a judge to throw that out?
I think it's going to be next to impossible to throw that statement out because the cops didn't have to Mirandize him. He went voluntarily to talk to them. And he was free to leave. Mm-hmm. So you only have to, what most people think is when they get arrested or when cops talk to you, they have to Mirandize you. Mm-hmm. Listen, the street cop here is not interested in extracting a confession, right? They're just there to process the arrest. I've had clients come to me and they say to me, the cop never Mirandized me. I mean, I hear this all the time, right? And I said, well, did he ask you any questions about the incident? He goes, no. Well, then he doesn't have to Mirandize you.
There
right?
you go. Okay.
It's just, but I said, only if he's asking you questions. I mean, you're under arrest, you're in custody, so if he were to question you, These guys don't want to. The street cop doesn't want to. Right?
That's why they bring you in.
Right. And this is for generally the thing. Now, if a more serious case, then it'll be a member of the, the agent or a detective from the NYPD or the assistant district attorney or the assistant U.S. attorney who comes in, and then they videotape you and they'll Mirandize you. But in this situation, he was like, I'm going to talk, I'm going to cooperate, and all this stuff. And then later on, he gives interviews now that are inconsistent with. So now, hold on. So when he spoke to the cops,
now this is an important piece. He spoke to the cops. I get how that is, I guess, official, right? Anyone could get that. But now he goes on, TV show and talks to some reporter. Is that also now official?
Of course it is.
That
could be used against him.
Wow. So even though, couldn't he say, well, I was acting, I was playing? He can't do that.
He gave an interview with, I think, George Stephanopoulos, and like an hour interview, and he said some things in that interview, as my understanding, were different than what he said to the police, right? So now you have all of these statements potentially being used against him. But then let's get back to the actual incident, which is at present they haven't arrested him.
Right.
They said they were going to charge him
manslaughter, right?
Right.
So that means, if I get that right, because they said manslaughter, that means the prosecutor doesn't believe he did it on purpose. Is that right?
Right.
If he thought he did it on purpose, then he would probably do some kind of murder charge.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, or a voluntary manslaughter. I think they were going to charge involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter was, you intended to hurt the person, but you didn't intend to kill him.
Got
but
it.
You ended up killing him.
Okay.
Involuntary is you didn't intend to kill him, but because your acts were either with lack of due care or like. Let's
somehow
say you're hanging a kid over a cliff. You don't intend to drop him, but then something happens. You drop the kid, right? You were just there to scare him,
right?
Right?
Still manslaughter.
Still involuntary, because there was no intention. It was just there. Let's say you were there to scare the kid.
Got it.
Right. So in this situation, they're saying, which doesn't even, to me, it doesn't even make any sense.
That's what I'm concerned about.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because you have a paid person, an armorer, which apparently is on every film set involving a gun.
100%.
Right?
And I'm pretty sure licensed by California with their gun laws.
Right. Well, New Mexico here. I think,
was it New Mexico? I thought it was California.
I think it was New Mexico
Okay,
where the set was, or whatever it is.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter. But the point is that that's the person who's responsible.
Right.
For making sure of gun safety. How do you put that on an actor?
Yeah, and how do you not charge the armorer? Right? Someone had... You expect...
No, she's been charged. Or they said that they were going to charge that.
They're going to charge her too.
Yeah.
That makes sense at least, okay? Because if you're the armorer and you give someone a loaded weapon, not that I'm an expert on this, but I've worked in an armory before. You give someone a cleared weapon.
In the military.
I was in the Marine Corps. I literally worked in an armory. I know weapons very well. There's a big difference. Someone said, well, I couldn't tell a difference between a blank and a regular cartridge. It's literally obvious. For those of you who don't know, a blank has no bullet in it. The top is crimped. There's no bullet. So that's how you know it's a blank. It's clear, obvious. Now rubber bullets are different, right? But if it's a blank, it's obvious. There's no bullet there. That's why it's a blank, right? It's clear. So if I give it to you and I go, there's blanks in it, or it's clear, and it's not, I didn't check it. That's my responsibility as an armorer. I'm supposed to check it. There's nothing in the chamber, and there's nothing in the magazine. If it's a revolver, there's nothing in any of the chambers at all. Nothing. Everything is gone. Everything's clear, or I know they're blanks. And you can literally see the blank. You can tell if it's a blank or not. So she's completely negligent no matter what. That's for sure. And she didn't tell him to check it. If I give you the firearm, I'm supposed to tell you it's cleared, check it. You're supposed to look to see that it's cleared. Or if it's not cleared, if it's a loaded weapon, you should know it's a loaded firearm. So I really think that drives me crazy.
My understanding is that the armorer is there to make sure that everything is good to go.
Yes.
So the actor doesn't need to check it.
Well, you still should, right? Every good armorer is going to tell you to look at it anyway, right? You're supposed to check it anyway. But again, that's a double check. I'm not supposed to give you a weapon that you don't know what's going on anyway, right. But you're supposed to double check anyway.
Well, see, then it comes down to, and again, I don't know firearms the way that you do, right? We don't really get these cases.
Mm-hmm.
We have a constitutional case here.
Sure.
Involving a Second Amendment claim of a guy who was not possessing a gun in public, was building ghost guns. And it's a Second Amendment claim. the last time I really dealt with guns was 20-something years ago when I was a prosecutor.
It's also New York, so
right.
we're not heavy with the gun thing.
Correct.
Yes.
So, to me, what you're speaking about, that it would be clear to me, I don't know, right? Like, I didn't have to handle bullets. We had, we prosecuted gun cases, and bullets were always kept separate from the gun, right?
What's the point? The armor is supposed to know these things.
Yeah.
And the armor is supposed to tell you everything. Anyway.
But the point you're raising seems, actually what you just spoke about, seems to then, if that's accurate, if there's an industry standard that the actor is supposed to double check and he didn't do it, then you may have an argument.
Maybe.
That for involuntary manslaughter. I still don't think you have an argument. I still don't think you have. You have at worst, a negligence on a civil side.
And that's the other point, right? So, all right, several things. One, what the incident, whatever he did, pull a trigger or not, he says he did pull a trigger, he says he didn't pull a trigger, whatever.
Right, he changed his...
Whatever he did, right? Whatever he did, the thing he did, killed one person and wounded another. But all I've heard so far is, well, we might do the involuntary or the manslaughter case. What about the other guy who got wounded?
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be two charges, or at least two sets of charges, or something like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're going to charge him for the, killing, right, whether you murder or manslaughter, looks like they're going with manslaughter, then certainly there should be some sort of, there's a theory of assault or battery.
Sure, something.
They use in other states. Here, the term battery doesn't exist in the New York penal law.
Oh, okay.
So, but in most states, it's assault and battery. So, battery is when what's a battery? What's an assault in New York is a battery in most other states.
Got it. Okay.
So, a reckless battery or something like that because he didn't check the gun and he shouldn't check the gun. It was interesting, the DA's comments that that's something about Baldwin and actors should be doing these things.
Is this a political thing for the DA?
Is
he like, I'm going to run for mayor or governor or something?
Of course it is.
Is that what this is about?
Of course it is,
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The case, it just doesn't, how do you charge Baldwin with a crime?
Yeah.
Right? It's whoever put that gun, that bullet in it, and the district attorney said that they don't know how that live bullet got in there.
Yeah.
So if they cannot show how that gun got in there, well, then that further absolves Alec Baldwin. If they can't say that, okay.
But hold on. So let's go down to this political piece, right? I think there's two parts of this. One is the DA saying, well, I want to be the guy who took down Baldwin or whatever, and I'm going to be the next AG of New Mexico or California. Is he being charged in New Mexico or California?
Yeah, New Mexico.
New Mexico. I'm going to be the AG of New Mexico, and I'm going to run for governor or whatever. Here in New York, our AGs are not attorneys general; they are aspiring governors.
Correct.
So maybe that's the same way they have it in New Mexico. But is there another side to worry about too?
Letitia James.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Is there an issue where maybe he can't even get Baldwin because, as popular as this guy wants to be, Alec Baldwin is popular. Is there a problem with finding a jury? You're not going to find. Maybe you're going to find someone who either hates him because of his Trump's parodies, or loves him because he's Alec Baldwin. And they're going to get in the jury, and no matter what, have a hung jury. Is that another worry he has to worry about?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think he's going to have a problem finding a jury that hasn't heard about it or doesn't know who Alec Baldwin is, right? And is not swayed one way or another. Like, oh, I hate that guy because he is hated on the right,
yes,
because of his Trump parodies,
yep,
and loved on the left. And this guy's not like the nicest guy in the world,
sure,
right? I don't
sure.
get that impression that he's ever been. But I want to come back to something with this case, and when I heard this. I was on in October of 2021.
I remember you
when this happened.
Yeah,
I was on Fox News talking about it. I was in Ecuador at the time, so I filmed from Ecuador. It was fun. And I remember saying to it, at worst, you may have a civil case, and then it's going to be why? Because he was the ultimate executive producer, and therefore it's such. No, that's why you have people that are paid to do these jobs, right? That that's what their role is. So when you hand this over, right, and the DA doesn't know who put that in there, okay. So then now you're putting a responsibility on Baldwin as an actor to check a gun. I know he was the executive producer as well, but in his role he was acting.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
So how do you put that on an actor?
Yeah. And if you use the executive producer excuse, do you then have to either charge? Do you have to charge every executive producer?
Charge everyone.
Do you have to?
Some director took a plea.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so there is a person who is taking a plea, and presumably to a misdemeanor charge, and presumably that person will somehow, perhaps, provide some testimony against Baldwin. But what can this person say? Baldwin didn't check. We know he didn't check.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. But to your point, would he have even known if he had checked?
Right.
Right. Would he have the knowledge to understand what he was checking for? He might not have. But so
unless it shows that Alec Baldwin knows guns and things like that, and
right.
then if what you're saying, if it turns out that they can show that Alec Baldwin, which I don't know the answer to this, I don't know if the guy he lives here in New York City, right? So he's probably doesn't have a firearm, right?
So by the way, if I ever get caught doing anything, I know nothing about guns. Nothing. I was lying. This is all joking. It's all jokes. So yes.
Listen, the Second Amendment challenges and New York's gun laws are going to go down because everything they're doing, or states like New York, in response to the U.S. Supreme Court decision, are not going to get held up.
So if they're going to be charging him because he was the executive producer, then it feels like to me that that's more of a civil case, right? He was responsible for it, but it wasn't criminal. Right? So he's responsible, but not criminal. So shouldn't they be saying, I don't know, starting a civil case against either him personally or the studio or whomever, and then how does that, or does it, affect the criminal case?
So as far as the civil case, one has already been brought, is my understanding. The family, I think a week or so after her death, lawyered up and I think has began a civil case.
Makes sense.
The relation to the criminal case is as follows. So if you have a civil case, let's say the family,
right,
they want a conviction.
Why?
In the criminal case, because a civil case is two parts.
Okay.
It's always about money.
Right.
Right? But it's two parts. First, is the person that you're suing liable? Right? So they use the word guilty. Is it liable? And the second part is about, okay, what are the damages? How much money should be awarded? If you have a criminal conviction, then you don't have to try the first part of the case because the criminal standard of proof is higher than a civil standard of proof. In a criminal standard of proof, that if the state is able to prove that Alec Baldwin committed this crime of, let's say, involuntary manslaughter, whatever they're going to ultimately charge him with, then in the civil case...
So the civil case is a slam dunk.
Bingo, you just go right to damages.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Okay. So...
And in this case, there's going to be significant damages because she died.
So if they haven't concluded with their civil case, they're probably happy there's a criminal case then.
Right. They wouldn't be concluded. And in fact, the normal course of action is to stay the civil case while the criminal case is pending.
Got it.
Because if he's cleared in the criminal case, you can still bring a civil case a la OJ. Right. Because it's a lower standard of proof. But the standard that they're using, that they're potentially going to charge him with involuntary manslaughter, is as low a standard, as low a level of culpability as you can get in a criminal case.
I see.
Right? The burden of proof is still the same.
Right.
But, they're saying that with disregard,
right,
with a reckless disregard.
You don't have to prove someone's intent. You don't have to prove a motive.
Right.
You don't have to prove all those things.
Correct.
So it's easier to prove in theory.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, yes. I get it. So now if I've got that down, does that prosecutor then, in his best case scenario, and maybe the family too, want a plea deal? Does the prosecutor want to say, hey, let me put some pressure on Alec Baldwin. He pleads to something. The prosecutor says, I got him because I got a conviction. And the civil people go, wonderful, we got a conviction. We're going to get our cash. And Baldwin doesn't go to jail. They make some kind of deal. does that seem like the logical outcome, or am I just just
under
making
normal
stuff up?
circumstances, that's often the way a prosecutor will think, right? But the problem for him is he's got Alec Baldwin on the other side, right? And because of the civil suit, Alec Baldwin is less likely to take a plea deal. His attorneys are going to say to him, if you take a plea deal, then the civil case becomes a slam dunk. And unless you can be indemnified by the studio, you are going to have some personal loss here. And that loss could be in the millions.
Right.
Because if he takes a deal that involves a plea to a crime, then it just helps the civil case that much more.
Right. And not just that, his career. Right. If he's a convicted felon, if it's a felony.
So is Mark Wahlberg.
I'm just saying it could affect his career. Maybe not. Maybe it's love, it doesn't matter.
Maybe.
So he's probably more worried about the cash than he's worried about his career. Yeah. Okay.
The state is going to take a hit.
That's true. It is, absolutely. All right, so then what about all the other people, right? I mean, I'm not hearing...
And he won't be able to pay for hilarious Spanish lessons.
That's true, yes. But what about other people, though? Like, is the fact that this person is charging him, why aren't we hearing about, or maybe we just aren't hearing about it. Are we not hearing about all the other charges that could be here? Isn't there, in theory, at least 6 people who could be charged with something? Isn't there a bunch of people who could be charged?
I'm confused by how this prosecutor, the statements that they're making, the fact that, okay, we're going to show, so have they gone to a grand jury yet? I mean, I can't seem to find that information when I look online. So wait, you're just announcing? I would think that they have secured an indictment, they're just waiting to file it.
It feels to me unethical.
It's bizarre.
Right, it feels to me unethical. It feels to me unethical that you could make a statement to say, you know what, I think I'm going to go beat this guy up.
I agree with you. I think this guy
you gotta either say
poisoned the well.
Yes.
He's poisoned, but this is what prosecutors do.
Yeah, don't you have
to
do
it all the time.
Aren't you supposed to say, no, I'm coming after him, here's the paperwork, here's the documents, here's the indictment, or whatever, right? Here's the charging sheet, something. Don't you got to say, here's the stuff, I'm coming after you. You can't just go, I don't like this guy. I feel like he just said that.
Yeah.
He just said, I don't like this guy.
He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy.
Yes, but you're not supposed to say
we're going to charge you.
You're supposed to be neutral, right? And only care about the facts, right?
It couldn't be further from the truth. You see it. You've
yes.
seen it. You consulted on a case of ours years ago. You saw the U.S. attorney make all sorts of outlandish comments.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. So this is just more of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess hopefully Alec Baldwin will get at least whatever is fair. We hope it is. But my biggest problem
which to me is not being charged. Should not be charged. And if anything, if he is charged, then I think he'll walk with the right lawyers.
The odds are, though, he's probably liable financially some way and probably should pay a penalty in that regard. He probably should. Whatever is fair. But my worry actually isn't him, because either way, I don't think he's going to go to jail. That's my feeling. I think he'll be fine financially the rest of his life. I think he'll be fine. My worry is all the other people who get beat up by the system that don't have Alec Baldwin's money.
Right.
That can't hire the cool, heavy-hitter lawyers. That can't make things happen. That's my worry.
Listen, I hear you. I think that this is a career-making case for this prosecutor.
Yep.
Maybe he or she is just spinning the wheel, hoping it'll stick. Or they could say they brought a case against Alec Baldwin, and I think that's also similarly what is behind some of these Trump prosecutions, particularly, or investigations, I should say.
Sure.
Particularly here with the Manhattan District Attorney or the previous Manhattan District, the prior DA. When you're out there, you're investigating, you win, and then you win in a court battle, but you don't bring charges.
Right.
Right. And so I just think
that's always my worry is that too many. Is that we look at someone like Alec Baldwin and we get concerned, but then we forget the little guy who somehow was beat up by the system.
What I always tell people about celebrity prosecutions, and I've spoken about this with regards to Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby.
Yep.
And people are like, they're bad guys, they should go down. And I'm like, neither of them got fair trials. Right? And Bill Cosby's case was ultimately dismissed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. and he's a free man.
Right.
Right? Particularly Harvey Weinstein, similar issues. They didn't get a fair trial, and people were like, what? He's a bad guy.
Right.
I'm like, think about what a prosecutor can do. This goes right to what you just raised. If a prosecutor can do what he did to Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein, what can that prosecutor do to that person, the middle class person,
Yes.
the poor person, even upper middle class, even relatively wealthy? When the state is coming after you,
Yeah.
you're going to be depleted of your resources. You're going to lose friends because people are going to assume you're guilty.
Right.
This is when you know who your real friends are, right?
Yes,
You know?
absolutely,
You know,
yes.
when you're in trouble,
Absolutely,
you know,
yes.
who's going to stand by you?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reality is most people do not have the resources
Right.
to hire, you know, a team, you know, a person like me. It's just reality. And so when you have to now look at these celebrity prosecutions and say, okay, what are they doing here? And they are overstepping.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going after a guy who's as wealthy as Harvey Weinstein was, or even Bill Cosby was, I mean, they have the resources to fight back, at least, right? They can
To
they
an
can,
extent.
right?
To an extent.
Yes, they can.
Right.
They have reasons to at least fight back. They at least have a defense. They can
Yeah.
do something against the
Right,
state,
right.
and they get crushed.
Right.
So how does the guy who has no real defense against the state?
That's
right.
yeah.
Yes, and they can at least throw up some walls, something, some barriers, some obstacles. They can try, but when the state comes after you, it's tough.
Right. And Bill Cosby had to go to jail and then to get vindicated and he spent like 2 years in jail
Right.
out of his 7 or 8 year or 9 year sentence or whatever it was. And, you know, as an old man, right, a blind man, and I know people are going to think, oh, he's a bad guy, he got what he deserved. I was like, well, no, not if he didn't get a fair trial.
Right. And
Right.
that's the key. The fair trial is the key.
Right? Because
Yes.
if they can do that to him, to Weinstein, they can do it to anyone.
Good point. Good conversation, man.
Thanks. Always good, Larry.
Yeah.